the strangest feeling. Don't know what to believe in. Cause every time you touch me, I can't control my body. Oh, baby, you are on my mind. All I think about, and I don't wanna stop.
From dating to relationships, from sex to love, from Christianity to politics, from darkness to light, you have now entered into the real zone. Welcome to Conversations with Trent, where no topic of conversation is safe from discussion. Now, here he is, Mr. Epic himself, Trent Williams.
What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to another conversation with Trent and friends. We got a good one tonight, man. We got a real good one tonight. Actually, all these conversations actually double over on the latter part of each show. We take something from each show, the latter part. And last conversation, it was on communication and having difficult conversations. So tonight's topic, difficult conversations, right here on the B2G Unity TV Network. Conversation with Trent and friends along with Coach Dee, wonderful Coach Dee. So let's bring her in. Let's get this conversation started. Difficult conversations. Hey.
Hey there, how are you?
Pretty good. Can't call it my spoil it. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm tired. I'll be honest. I had COVID still lingering. I tried to do a full day of like stuff I usually do, and I'm ready for a nap.
Right. Well, hopefully you shake that soon.
Well, you know, I physically, like, I don't have the cold or anything, but I just don't have the energy level back yet. So
Wow.
I had to go get plates for my car, and the dealership that I bought it from is like 40 miles away. But Saturday traffic was horrendous, and that was just a long drive. And this coming from somebody who's driven cross country, so, you know.
Right. Wow. Well, hopefully you kick that soon, man. Any juices you're taking or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, I have my sea moss gel, my local honey for my tea, because local honey with herbs, local herbal tea is natural to your area that you live in, so that helps.
Right.
You know, all my vitamins and stuff, so we're good.
Right. Gotcha. So we're talking about difficult conversations tonight. And got to thinking, man, difficult conversation. You know, sometimes, well, actually the majority of times, the majority of people as well, it's kind of hard to have that difficult conversation. As I was actually taking notes and you know, doing some research on the topic here tonight, got me to thinking about my very difficult conversation and why I was avoiding that conversation. It was a conversation with my then, you know, my wife, my now ex-wife. And it was about the situation that we were dealing with. And I kept running from the conversation, not wanting to have it, did not want to have it because I already knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. So I was running from that conversation. So as I got into therapy, started dealing with, Dr. Stan, gave me enough strength to want to have the difficult conversation. But what I had to do was, and how I got past it, I planned for the conversation. Because we all know that cooler heads always prevail. I went in with a cool head. I planned for the conversation. But before that, before I acquired the tools, I didn't want to have a conversation because I already knew. Mm-hmm. So what I saw, what I was feeling, exactly what was going on. Mm-hmm. So I was running from that conversation.
See, but, I'm the type, I will run full force into that conversation. But other people don't like that, especially if they're being deceptive. So that's what happened with me is like, listen, tell the truth.
Exactly.
Tell the truth and be honest, then you want to move on, and we'll move on. But you want to lie continually still, whatever, man.
Exactly. Yeah, but the thing about it, man, what I realized, I already knew what I was feeling. I already knew what the situation was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, but I continued to run away from having that conversation.
Yeah.
She wasn't initiating that conversation at all. But the moment I started planning it, I was like, okay, cool. But what got me over the hump with that situation, I asked a specific question. Do you want to win? Or do you just want to be right? Or do you just want to be right all the time? Do you want to win? Because I wanted the relationship. I wanted my family. That's winning to me.
Right.
Her non-answer gave me an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, you know, it's time to pack it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about before we go into how to have the difficult conversation, let's go over like the signs of a bad communication in relationships.
Cool. Before we do that, let's highlight the folks here real quick.
Sure. 1 second here. I'll bring comments up. So, Mr. Alvin, hi, sir. How are you? He says, good evening, panel. So, it's Grammy night, so we may not be as many comments tonight.
Oh, it's all good. All good. We still have to have a conversation.
Slash came. Thank you, Slash. Grand.
What up, Slash?
People, greetings, Princess Coach Dee and Mr. Epic.
What up? What up? What up? So, go ahead. Talk about the points.
All right. So, the first thing before you go into having difficult conversations, you have to have a hard look at the communication as it is. So some signs of bad communications are people don't listen. Like this is on both sides. This is not just the other person. Feelings are invalidated. Conversation is interrupted. Offer unsolicited advice. Constantly distracted. For instance, a good one is if you're talking to somebody and they're constantly looking at their phone. Use aggressive language or defensive. They lack empathy. They have poor emotional intelligence, like they don't manage their tone or inflection, or they stonewall you during the conversation or gaslight you.
Right.
So first thing you have to do is take a look at yourself, and then there's ways you can increase your fix your lack of communication before you have that discussion. So, and this would be individually. You could increase your awareness, make a commitment to change within yourself about how you communicate, set up accountability, understand your attachment style. I've talked about relationship attachments before, about avoidance and disorganized, anxious attachments.
Absolutely.
And be proactive about your communication and be open to suggestions, right? Learn, set healthy boundaries, check in on a regular basis, be vulnerable and curious, and always be
now. Question for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that what you're reading off? The point is what you're reading off. Are you reading off the initiator or the one that's actually receiving the difficult conversation?
That is for both sides. If you're in a relationship where there is difficult communication, that's for both people. Everybody can change how they communicate.
Gotcha. But do you agree that you have to first come in with a plan before approaching with that very difficult conversation? Mm-hmm. There has to be a plan in place because, for one, let's just say, just like my situation, coming out of that, going into that divorce and what have you, before the divorce, it was a very delicate situation, very delicate. And like I said, I already knew. I knew, but I was afraid to have the conversation because that was going to be a confirmation for me. I already knew. When it was huge anxiety on my part. Huge anxiety because I really did not want to let it go. I was really fighting for my family. Yeah. But like I said, once I had a conversation with Dr. Stan, he was like, hey, you got to put a plan in place because we have to resolve this. That's the only way you can move forward. You have to resolve it. You have to have a plan in place.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, in the coaching world, we have something called I Grow. So
exactly.
It's the issue, what's going on, what's on your mind, what's up, the goal, the ultimate goal, what do you really want, describe the perfect outcome, the reality, what it's going to cost you, how you're really feeling about this, what you've actually tried, what options are available, what has worked in the past, what hasn't, and what's next.
Right.
Once, what are the goals and actions that you will take to get this completed, and then
Exactly.
it continues with the
For,
next
for
thing.
me, for me, it was I had to actually accept the reality. I had to accept the reality that hey, you're in this situation. It's
Mhm.
kind of bleak, and it's going toward the end.
Right.
I had to accept that reality. But that just the fear of getting confirmation for something I already knew. How crazy is that? I already knew, but confirming it in my mind was going to make it worse.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's when you're dealing with a ton of anxiety, a ton of fear, a ton of insecurity of the lost, of the thought of the loss.
Right.
But and this is for the viewers, man. You have to when you want to have that conversation, that very difficult conversation, you have to go in with a plan first. You have to be realistic about everything about that plan, about everything about your situation. It has to be a very realistic. There has to be some tough talk with yourself first before you have the difficult talk with your partner.
Right. And here's the thing. Um, Even if you have when you have that conversation, there's certain things you need to do. Like you have to be actively listening
Right.
and pay attention to their body language, because communication is not only verbal, right? There's
That's right.
nonverbal communication as well. And I always tell people, share your thoughts and feelings, not events, and never talk in absolutes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Always, never. Don't use those words. Okay.
Exactly.
And don't let your mouth get ahead of your brain.
Right.
Right? If you start getting ahead of your brain, then you're not thinking before you're talking. And when we start doing that, we can be very hurtful. Right?
Right.
And think about how you're speaking to your partner. And would you speak to anybody else, or would you allow anybody else to speak you that way?
And here's the thing for me, when I was walking through that season of life, when the most important thing I wanted to ask her, like I said, I planned for it, but it was just a simple question, and her non-answer to the question gave me my answer. So I was, sitting there talking to her, what have you, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to win, or you just want to be right all the time?"
Mm-hmm.
No response. That was the springboard to get me moving, to get me the hell out of Michigan. Her non-answer, her non-expression, her deadness, her stillness on wanting to win for the family turned me completely off in a millisecond. I couldn't
But
get out of Michigan fast enough.
here's a question. You did not get a response, so did you really get a response that she wanted to win?
I
That
did.
she wanted to be right.
She wanted to be right, and she didn't want the relationship.
Okay.
So I received that, and I was like, "Hey," and that's when I went in with the cooler head.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to walk away freely and very calmly, and with peace and gracefully.
Cool. That's
I
good.
walked
That's
out
good.
gracefully and didn't think anything of it.
Right. Because you're seeking to understand versus seeking to respond. And I
Exactly.
think that's where a lot of people make the mistake, because they're
Exactly.
listening to person and they're listening to respond to what they're saying versus understanding what they're saying. And if somebody doesn't feel safe in that space where they're speaking,
It's
you're
not gonna
not going
happen.
to get
Yeah,
everything that they're saying if you're not listening.
absolutely. So, my advice to the folks, if you're gonna have that difficult conversation, again, plan, plan, plan. Be very realistic with yourself. Have a tough talk with yourself before you have the conversation with the partner. And just go in and just understand that it may not go the way you want it to go. It may not go the way you want it to go. Everything you planned in your head, just throw it out the window. It's not going to happen for you. And
And
just
a,
move on with
yeah, and a good one like that is, don't expect other people to react the way you would react.
it. Exactly.
Right? So don't say, "Well, I would feel this way in a certain situation," because other people have different emotions and different experiences, and they will respond differently.
Absolutely. So tell me something. Mm-hmm. Why do you think, in your opinion, most people run from difficult conversation?
Why
that very difficult talk? Why do people run from that? They know it's good for them, but they're going to run from that tough talk. Have that difficult conversation, they'll run.
A lot of people run because they want to hide. They don't want to hear the truth.
Right.
The thing is, if people are running from the difficult conversation, they may be able to avoid it in the close future, but it's going to build resentment later on.
Exactly.
The conversation will still need to be had. And what's going to happen is it's just going to build up, and the issue will get bigger than if you had been addressing it as it came up.
Exactly. Right? Look like we got a couple of comments in there.
All right, 1 second. Oh, let me scroll. Kathy Dye says hi everyone. Slash says,
hey, what's going on, Kathy?
Slash saying hello to Al. Miss Tammy, hey Trent, Coach D. Often people avoid the difficult conversations because they're lying or avoiding the truth. Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, yeah.
Alvin says, what's up, Mr. Marine? Kathy says, no eye contact is another way conversation may not happen if you're together in the same place at the same time. And like Trent, I knew my marriage was over. Trying to make him love me became exhausting for me. You can't make someone love you when they don't. Yeah.
At all.
So Be careful with the eye contact, because culturally, or if somebody is on the spectrum, that may be, I tend to dismiss the eye contact. I look at other body language.
Right.
Slash says, if communication is key, why the need to have difficult conversations with the ones one loves? Not dealing with causes lend to reaction. Listen and problem solving is a new concept to people, because there's always going to be not everybody's going to agree on everything.
Right.
We're humans. There's always going to be difficult conversations, especially once you have children. If you haven't had conversations about discipline or different things, religion, or all that stuff.
And again, I can't stress this enough. When you want to have that conversation, and you know that your partner or your friend or your family member have a tough time with these conversations, plan first. That's just like I had to have a conversation with my brother. One of the most toughest conversations, because I was going at his neck, period. I was going at his neck. And that's when he and I will, our relationship was very turbulent. But once I acquired the tools to deal with myself, when he wasn't dealing with younger brother Trent, he was dealing with motivator, life coach Trent. Mm-hmm. So when I talked to him and I sat him down and I dealt with him. And he had to be there because there was no way out.
Right.
There was no way out. We had to have that conversation, but I planned to have that conversation with him. I planned it. I'm laying it. Go ahead.
When you go into a difficult conversation, but be careful with your plan, because you can overplan.
Exactly. I totally agree.
That doesn't allow for nuances in how conversations occur. But here's the thing. If you don't sit down with yourself and think about the conversation that you're going to have, you can't really expect the other person to do the same thing if you're not willing to put in the work.
I totally agree. But here's the thing with that situation with him. Mm-hmm. He's extremely stubborn. And I knew he was going to be very reluctant to have the conversation. So it was a conversation that it wasn't on the fly for me, but it was on the fly for him, if you get what I'm saying.
I'm shocked that your family would be stubborn. Well, that's news.
Yeah, absolutely right. So when I had that conversation with me, I placed him in a situation where he couldn't get out of that situation.
Right.
He couldn't get out of it, and he had to talk. Mm-hmm. So when you're dealing with stubborn people and you're dealing with very emotional people, you have to be very careful with that. Mm-hmm. You have to.
Also, think about how they were raised. Were they raised where they had a voice? Where they were able to have conversations? Like the conversations I have with Xavier, you'll see people that parents will not have those conversations with them. Like I'll check in with them. I'm like, is there anything I can do to be a better mommy?
Right.
And people are like, why would you ask your child that? I'm like, because they're the ones judging if I'm being a good mommy or not.
Right.
And people are like, well, I don't care what they think. I'm like, you know what? And that's why adult children don't talk to their parents.
Right.
So
let's take a twist real quick. Let's get to the comments. We'll take a twist to.
Kathy says, I like that Coach D. Body language is key. You must be transparent and vulnerable in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Slash says, living the life, not the dream. What's good, Mr. Williams? Mr. Alvin says, real talk, Coach D. Yep.
Exactly.
Thank you all for being here. So what's the twist?
Let's put a twist on it. So as I'm writing up the show, and I was doing some edits on our show from last week, and I got to thinking about the tough conversation on sex and about not being pleased in bed, right? Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, you got to be careful when you're having that tough conversation with your mate. You have to, because that's the most vulnerable space that you could be in when you're actually in bed. But you have to find ways to be open and have the conversation. And as I was cutting this tape, you and I were exchanging, talking and whatnot, and we brought up a scenario about the woman not being pleased in bed. Mm-hmm. But she's still there after 5-10 years, and she's knocking on the door trying to get his attention on, hey, this is how I want to be pleased, this is how I want to be pleased. Then it becomes a situation where her body's there, but her mind is on the other side of town, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So who's wrong in that case? Who's wrong in this scenario?
Why does somebody have to be wrong?
I mean, well, it's a lopsided situation at this point. Mm-hmm. Has she communicated effectively to tell him, hey, I'm not being pleased? Or did she not go into that whole realm of not wanting to shame him?
Well, if you're looking at the difficult conversation and the first question is who is wrong, then that conversation's already gone bad.
Do tell.
Because there can't be, in a difficult conversation, even in the worst possible scenarios, there is not a right or wrong in the conversation. There are rights and wrongs in behaviors, especially if you're in a marriage.
Thank you. I was ready to get you on that.
No, don't worry about that. There are rights and wrongs in behaviors. Right? Because when you get married, you agree to a certain set of behaviors. And if you go outside that behavior, it is wrong.
Gotcha.
Some people will tell you that but that's a whole other conversation. We'll have to have that conversation.
Absolutely. So let's set up a scenario here, right?
Okay.
Let's just say we're in a situation, and the conversation I want to have is with a very insecure person. Mm-hmm. Very insecure. You have to be we have to understand that we have to be very delicate with insecure people. I have a tough time with dealing with folks like that because I just kind of blurt it out, just go for it. Sometimes I have to back my way out and say, you know what, let me try a different approach. So we have to be mindful when we're dealing with folks, insecure folks. We're giving them tough talk because we could actually push them over the legs by actually talking a little harsh.
Well, you shouldn't be talking harsh anyway. You should be using affirming languages, not violent language.
Not violent language. I'm talking, sometimes people do need tough talk. Mm-hmm. You can't just go just brushing over situations. No, man. I mean, you need to give it to them.
You can have tough talk without being an asshole.
Give me an example of an asshole.
So, using an absolute would make you an asshole. So, for instance, if somebody's not being satisfied, instead of saying, I think there's a way we could take a look at what's going on and see how we can fix this so that we both are on the same page. Versus, you never satisfy me, you're an ass.
I get that. Yeah, I get that part. I get that.
When you blame or you're shifting all the responsibility onto that one person.
I totally get that. And I'm totally 100% in agreement with you on that.
Yeah,
but when you're dealing with sometimes when you're dealing with folks who are not so sure, and I'm not talking not just in the bedroom or whatever, just life in general. If the relationship is that if there's a hiccup in the relationship, at some point you have to go 10 toes down. You have to.
I think people forget that you can be assertive without being aggressive.
I totally agree.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people miss the nuances there.
I agree.
So instead of being like, you can call people out and call them out kindly, and within an intimate relationship,
Right.
it's completely different than calling out somebody who's being like a jerk on the internet that you don't know, like a stranger or something.
Right.
Because you have to remember that you still need to look at this person in the morning, right? So
I got you.
And here's the thing: if you have poor communication or a lack of communication, it increases the stress levels. And if you have somebody who has low self-esteem, depression, or anxiety, that will increase it.
Exactly. You know what I found personally, once I was able to reach the higher level of myself,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to run toward the conversation.
Right.
That was the only time it took place. Once I reached the higher level of myself and I was on a different realm in life,
Mm-hmm.
I'm running toward the difficult conversation.
Right.
But before, I was running away. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want no parts of that tough talk. I didn't want anything to do with someone telling me about myself.
Right. So here's the thing. There are signs when there is that time to have that difficult conversation where people need to move their separate ways.
Exactly.
So if there's a lack of compatibility, if there's persistent trust issues or little emotional intimacy, if there's a sexless marriage or relationship, if you stop being curious about each other, if you live separate but parallel lives, like if you're like basically like, and I'm not talking about the couples who are working different shifts, so that shifts where they're like passing each other at night. I'm talking about people who are working the same shift who basically do not spend any time together because they live very separate lives.
I get it.
Right. So that, and everybody knows those signs, and we try to avoid it because nobody wants to be that person's lack of love.
Exactly. And you know, and I'm glad you brought that up. For me, I saw it. All the signs were there.
Mm-hmm.
They were there. I did not want that red light to go green. Didn't want it. You know what I'm saying? So I saw it. I was very afraid of the confirmation. So what I saw and felt, it was really taking place. It was really happening.
Yeah.
It was really happening.
Yeah. I was the same way before I did all my therapy and everything. Because when I looked at it, I blamed myself. I was like, well, I was the one that chose this person. So, you know, you put a lot of blame on yourself that people put a lot of responsibility on themselves when it's a dual responsibility. And sometimes that other person will take no responsibility whatsoever. And you just have to, like, you know, if you can't have the difficult conversation, sometimes you have to go, you know what, man, peace out. I'll see you on the...
So for me, I'll get a little transparent here. For me, the turn off in that relationship, I felt like she was giving up on my daughter.
Mm.
You know, to have a family. That completely turned me completely off. At that point, I wasn't even focused on a relationship anymore. I was like, you don't even want to win for the family. To deal with this for the family in a healthy way. I thought she was giving up. I felt like she was giving up on my daughter. I walked away. So that's when it became more about Kennedy than anything. Like, are you serious?
Well, here's the thing a lot of people won't like, because people like to say we need to stay together for the kids. No, and I'll tell you why. It's because when you stay together for the kids, you are giving those kids an example of a dysfunctional relationship.
Exactly.
You would not want your daughter in that same relationship. I would not want Xavier.
But here's the thing. When I say family, I'm talking about a family. I'm talking about the family, period. The family. So I wouldn't sit into a situation and leave her. I wouldn't leave her in that situation to deal with what we were going through. No. But when her non-answer, her non-response to wanting to win, yeah, she wanted to win, but not with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
and that was it.
Yeah, not everybody is our person, and sometimes
exactly
you are a better family separate than you are together. Like you can be amazing co-parents.
Exactly, and that we are. Yeah. After all these years, that we are. But when you're in that mess, and I mean it takes a ton of patience and it takes a ton of work, inward work, on yourself first before you have the difficult conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You have to deal with yourself first before even having that conversation.
Yep. And I always tell people there comes a time where that person ceases to be your person, because
Exactly.
you can then look at them and be like, what the heck was I thinking about?
Exactly. But that's the only way. The folks don't realize that. And I know if you're sitting in that mess now, you say, wow, difficult conversation, Trent. Yeah, difficult conversation, but you won't get to the other side until
you've had that conversation.
That's it. You have to have a conversation before you get to the other side.
Yep.
You can walk away gracefully at that point. After having a difficult conversation, you can walk away gracefully and healthy.
Yeah. Now, I know some people will email me. There are some people you cannot have that conversation with because they're master manipulators. They will gaslight you. They will manipulate you. And you literally, and there's a term for what you have to do called gray rock, is you give them absolutely no response.
Right.
Because what they want is a response. And they will purposely use conversation to get a response. So you basically have to learn to have a poker face. And like in one group, there is, you only use there's a specific app for parents who are co-parenting, where they only use this one app. I forget what it's called, family something or other. And it's all the texts are saved. Because the one thing that narcissistic or borderline personality disorder people will manipulate and gaslight you is they'll delete all the messages. But it saves every message and there's no way to delete them. And I tell people, there's a sentence that says, your attempt to show me in a negative light has been noted. End of conversation.
Gotcha. Before we get to this, we're going to take another turn in the conversation. Okay. I want to talk about the people that prolong having that conversation. You know that relationship is tore up from the floor up, but you're prolonging having that conversation and walking away. We're going to talk about that. Let's get to the comments and we'll dig into that.
Perfect. Miss Kathy says people run from difficult conversations due to judgment. Correct. / planning comes off as being ambushed in the Black community. Some people break off the lines of communication because they just want their way. It's not about right, wrong, or indifference. You're right. And therapists say despite masturbation being a completely normal human behavior depicted as far back as prehistoric times, up to 30% of women don't know how to pleasure themselves. That's way off of base, but you're right. I'm not sure where that. That's Slash. I think Slash is on last week's conversation still.
And he's an active Slash is correct about that. And to piggyback off of the Black community feeling ambushed when having a planned conversation, there's nothing, there's nothing not normal. Let's just say that. There's nothing not normal with having a planned conversation. But in the Black community, we always jump on the defensive when someone's telling us about ourselves.
And that's generational.
We'll always do that. But, planned conversations are the best conversations because cooler heads will prevail. After having a planned conversation, cooler heads will always prevail. If you got two people in a situation having a conversation, a difficult conversation, if both are angry, nothing's going to get done.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Nothing will get done. So let's get to that. Let's get to that conversation, that tough conversation that you want to have with your mate. This relationship is over with. It is.
Well, I got two more conversations, and Slash has a good comment.
Go ahead.
Kathy says, exactly, it's not healthy to remain in a relationship that does more harm to you and the children than not. Slash says, claiming they don't know how, which is an uncomfortable conversation where they may just blame their partner, whether them address the cause, just react, creating a larger problem. Yep, he's right. That's exactly right.
That's true.
So here's the thing. You have to know what your partner's communication style is. And you have to understand what your communication style is and how those communication styles may clash. And there's a great book called Nonviolent Communication. Let me look up the author's name. There's the Center for Nonviolent Communication. Bear with me one moment. Marshall Bertram Rosenberg. Nonviolent communication. It is a way of speaking where basically it's nonviolent. It's people don't get on the defensive right away, which is what happens with many difficult conversations. They become accusatory, so one person will defend themselves because it's natural and human. If we're being accused of something, is we defend, and then if that doesn't work, we go into fight or flight.
I get it. But let's get to that conversation about the relationship where you have to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. This relationship has been a turmoil for the last several years, and you guys know that this is over with. But you guys are prolonging that conversation, a very difficult conversation. The longer you prolong it, the worse it's going to get. Yep, the more disrespect is going to set in. So you have to buckle down and deal with it and not run away from it. Because running away from it is only going to add fuel to the fire. It's going to make it worse.
It will indeed. And so here's the thing. Starting the conversation is key on how you start it. So if you start with questions or accusations, it's going to start bad. It's not going to go any better from there.
Right.
So you have to ask questions that's not accusatory, that's not going to put them on defensive.
Right.
And so I do have some tips first. You need to give up being right off the bat. You need to choose the right time to talk to somebody, right?
Absolutely.
Stay focused on the problem at hand. When they're talking, just listen and reflect what you hear, even if you don't agree with it.
Again, and here's the thing for me. I totally agree with you on those, by the way. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing for me. You have to walk in with a solution-based mindset. And what I mean by solution-based, whether it's not even going to go out, is going to end and you guys not being together. That still could be a solution-based mindset. But you have to think on both sides. You have to go in with a rational thinking, and you go in with the thought of, hey, this could go the other way. This could not go in my way. But that's still a solution-based mindset. Just don't be delusional about it. Because some of these situations is desolate. You know it. They know it. No one wants to have that conversation. No one wants to pull the trigger on a relationship because you already know what you see and feel. You already know it. Mm-hmm. Just go ahead and have that conversation and go on with life.
Yeah.
But walk in with a solution-based mindset, even if it's not in your favor in the end of the conversation.
But also remember, even if you have that solution-based mindset, you need to be prepared to listen.
That's right.
Because not everybody wants you to solve the problem. Sometimes the problem is not being heard.
Sometimes solving a problem could be you guys are not together. Mm-hmm. Problem solved. Get on with life.
It. But, sometimes that problem can be fixed. So don't start off the conversation with, can we talk or we have to talk?
Right.
Avoid those two at all costs. Like start with, I'd like to talk about, or what do you think about? I've been thinking about. I want to have a better understanding of questions that will open them up, but not put them on the defensive immediately.
Exactly. The whole "can we talk" thing and have me out there running like a runaway slave, running from that conversation. I don't want that.
Yeah. But here's the thing. These are conversations that should be had prior to the relationship. Like how you handle disagreements and conflict resolutions, how you handle finances, how you handle kids, how many kids, how you're going to raise the kids, are you going to raise them religion, are you going to raise them not? All these questions are stuff that should be had beforehand.
Exactly.
And then there's fewer difficult conversations later on.
Exactly. Glad these conversations are piling up over there.
Mm-hmm. Right. I have some more comments. So 1 second. Slash says, beside, no man wants to hear those 3 words from woman. Also, there's a vast difference of talk to someone than talking at someone. You're correct.
That's true.
Texting has leveled the playing field for the conversationless people, minus the tone and level of expression. And Kathy says, I believe it was easier for both of us when I made the decision to say enough is enough. He was thinking, but not sure how to say it. He was more receptive when I approached that way. Yeah.
Right.
Some people will never pull the plug because for them it means failure.
Exactly.
So you have to pull the plug for them.
Exactly. And see, that was my problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was considered failure because our families, both our families, they looked at us as that's it right there.
Yeah.
And I could not see myself going back south after a failed marriage. After everything that we've done and everything we've accomplished, I felt like a failure. I felt like a complete failure. And that was the most challenging thing for me, is going back and having to face my family.
Well, that's because society has deemed it to be shameful.
Exactly.
You know, and
Totally
there's this whole thing where you're supposed to stay married for life. No, because who you are may change.
Exactly.
And it's okay to end relationships. It's
Exactly.
not okay to stay in toxic relationships because society deems that you have to stay there.
That's right. Absolutely right.
But it, let me see. Yeah. So we're caught up in the conversations. But
Good
here's
stuff.
the thing. When you have that conversation, it makes it easier because things will go away. Like you're going to solve problems. And then, you get closer as a couple.
Right.
You breach some walls that were up prior to, right? And you
Right.
increase intimacy when you have difficult conversations.
That's right. And a ton of folks don't realize that, you do increase intimacy with a tough conversation. That means you guys are becoming more open.
Yep.
So it's good stuff.
Yeah. So, and if you do break up, then you know what? There's lots of great breakup music. There's heal, cry it out if you need to.
Right.
Heal, get therapy, and don't get into another relationship until you've healed from the previous one.
That's it.
Because then you're going to bleed all over somebody who didn't cut you.
Exactly.
If you have issues with trust because you were cheated on, understand that those issues are going to take time to go away, and not everyone is a cheating lying bastard.
Exactly. And also
people
understand that running away will not heal your wounds.
Mhm.
You're only putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right.
So running away from the conversation, you're just picking up a Band-Aid. Every time you run from that conversation, it's another Band-Aid you're placing on top of that cut.
Yeah, because it's easier for some people to change partners than it is to take a deep look at themselves and change their own behavior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
It's communication is so important. But there's one difficult conversation that I really want to touch on that people reach out to me a lot about, and that is when your child comes out. Right? So, and people get me, they're like, well, Dee, you're black. If your son comes out as gay, then you're going to be mad. I'm like, no, why would I come out? My son will be my son no matter what. If he comes out as gay, then fine. Maybe he will find another perfect, and then I'll have 2 sons.
Right.
Bonus. For me. Here's the thing. If your child comes out as gay, thank them for being vulnerable with you and trusting you with that information. Here's the thing. Don't beat yourself up. They will give you more information about their identity and how they see themselves. And don't kick them out for once or disown them. For God's sake, it's hard enough being gay with all the things that they will face without their family abandoning them. Nobody chooses to be because it is a difficult choice to come out.
Right.
It is. They are in a lot of danger. They are harmed regularly. They're insulted. They're fired. There's a lot going on. So be their safe space always. You know what I mean? So
Gotcha.
you will need time to adjust. Tell them that you will need time to adjust. There's no way you could have known. It's not just a phase, and they will be okay. You know?
Right.
So just be them and just love them the way you've always done. Like I go to the Pride parades on a regular basis, and I was wearing the Free Mom Hug T-shirt years ago, and it will break my heart how people will come up and they will give me a hug. And if you've ever hugged somebody who's carrying a lot and they let go of that heavy sigh
Yeah.
and their body relaxes into you, like I adopted a lot of grown adults like who still send me messages. Just it's a difficult conversation that is going to be had with you by some, and our community unfortunately does not do well with that conversation. And I just ask that people reach out and be vulnerable and love your kids when they have that conversation with you. All right, enough. I'm off my soapbox now. I just had to make sure I had to get that out.
That's all good. But again, with these difficult conversations, man, you guys have to understand that you'll stop running once you reach the higher level of yourself. I'm telling you that's a realm that is renewed every single day I wake up. Once I got to the higher level of myself, I was able to run toward those tough conversations. And I became a solution-based mindset person. By dealing with that, so I'm always looking for the solution. I'm always looking to solve the problem. But you have to reach the pinnacle of yourself before doing that. So you can't walk around here in a superficial state and just with rose-colored glasses on or anything like that. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be very assertive with yourself and be patient with yourself sometimes. It's not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen for me overnight, but it's a must. It's imperative. You know, it's very imperative that you locate that yourself and you locate that next realm. That's the only way you'll be able to get on with this life, man, because today, man, it's tough out here. It's completely tough. And especially it's actually extra tough when you're walking around with the mask on. And I'm not talking about the COVID mask.
No. And it's when you do a lot of healing and a lot of work in yourself, those conversations are not as difficult because they made your peace, and you will try to maintain your peace at all costs.
Exactly. You know, because you know when you're actually sitting in that mess, like I was sitting in that mess years ago, I couldn't see it because I had rose-colored glasses on, the ones that I purchased. No one gave them to me. I purchased those rose-colored glasses. That was me. I did that.
Oh yeah, the vast majority have done that. Vast majority of us have done it at some point in our lives.
Exactly.
You know, and sometimes we need a swift kick in the pants
to
wake us up.
Exactly. But the moment you take that inward mirror and deal with yourself, I'm telling you, man, life is so much better. Then you can have that difficult conversation. You won't run from it.
No. Because you know that the difficult conversation makes other conversations easier.
Exactly.
Right? So, and once you look at yourself and you're willing to have the conversation, it's really not that difficult anymore. It may be difficult hearing the response and the feedback you get from the other person, but here's what I talk about feedback. Feedback is just information, and it only has the power that you give it.
Exactly. I'll share with you guys for a moment here. When I was bringing that toxic to the party, when I purchased the toxic and brought it to my own party, I was always on the defense. Always. When people wanted to have that tough conversation about me and wanted to tell me how much of an asshole I was always on the defense. Not even knowing that I was bringing the toxic to my own party.
Right. Yep.
I was bringing that toxic. But the moment I dealt with that, I was able to rid myself of the toxic behavior and everything that came with it. I became a better person.
Right. Yeah. It's, you know, I want to have conversations, but I would get stonewalled. So I would be like, you know what? To the point where my ex went on a trip to did the Tony Robbins Date with Destiny,
Right.
and he suggested I watch these Tony Robbins relationship videos. I'm like, okay. Meanwhile, he was there with his mistress.
Wow.
So it's
Wait, at the same convention?
she was staying with him, sir. So here's the thing: is when you're having difficult conversations, sometimes people will play you because you're
Right.
kind. So pay
I got to
attention
be
to
honest
body
with you.
language.
I didn't see that one coming.
Mm,
As far as with Kevin, I didn't see that coming
no, me
because
neither.
you're so easy to get along with.
Yeah, a little too easy is the thing, because I allow people to be themselves, and I don't put any pressure on you need to do this or do that,
Right.
right? So I have learned my lesson through many, many, many hundreds of hours of therapy.
Right. Right.
So
Haven't we all? Haven't we all, man?
yeah,
So,
I'm much more demanding now.
exactly.
So we do have some comments. Slash says the silent treatment, a wife whose husband severe conversation with her earlier in the marriage. Yep.
Yeah.
She endured 4 decades of silence that started with a minor disagreement and only ended with her husband's death. 40 years of eating meals by herself, watching television by herself. 40 years of being invincible. When I asked her why she stayed with him for all that time, William said she answered simply, because at least he kept a roof over my head. Yep. Now remember, in society there was a time where women had to have a man's signature to get a bank account, to
Right.
get a credit card. I was alive when it became law that women could get their own bank accounts. So it's
Yeah,
not
but
that long ago.
how miserable is that? You staying because of monetary stuff.
It's
How
very
miserable is
it's very miserable. Think of
that?
think
That
women were
is
property.
completely miserable. And how insecure is that of a man knowing that woman need him, and he's using that and holding that over her head?
Well, that's why when I talk to people, men goes, well, our grandmothers did that. I'm like, the reason women are doing many of the things now is because our grandmothers pulled us aside. You need to
Exactly.
talk to your grandmother
Yeah.
about.
Newsflash, fellas. Not only is it a toxic trait, but your insecurities are magnified when you do shit like that.
Yeah.
When you hold something over a woman's head because you know she needs you, that's an insecurity trait that you need to deal with.
Yeah, because here's the paradox of this entire situation. Men are talking. Some men now are talking about being alpha males and want women who are submissive. And I'm like, well, sir, if you want women who are submissive and you want to be the provider, you need to provide.
Right. I get it.
You know what I mean?
And you know,
You can't
one of
get
my
somebody
hit.
who's a gold digger if you want to, if you're supposed to be a provider. It doesn't work that
I
way.
got to be honest with you. When I hear stories like that, when women say they have no other choice, it's almost like they're forced. Because I know a couple of women that are in situations like that, where their husbands are the breadwinners, and they've placed themselves in those type of situations for years.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel sorry for that because it's like, damn, he's really holding her hostage.
And yeah, and
He's literally holding her hostage.
it's financial abuse. Like some people, there are.
It is financial abuse. You're right.
I am in groups where you would be shocked at some of the things that are happening in current relationships today.
Right.
Like men will give women $100, and that's supposed to be groceries for the month.
Right.
When eggs are $7 a dozen.
Right.
And then we'll complain about the price of everything or anything that she spent. So it's and if you come from an abusive home, this is a cycle that has to be broken, and it's not an easy cycle to break.
Absolutely.
If that's all you know.
Absolutely.
That's a whole other conversation.
Absolutely.
But you know what? It's have the conversations, no matter how difficult they may be. If you may hear about some stuff about yourself you don't want to acknowledge.
Exactly.
Right? But it is what it is.
Okay, it's 5 to the hour. What's your takeaway? What's your teachable moment?
My teachable moment is always communicate. No matter how difficult it may be, always communicate with the other person. If they don't want to communicate, then you need to walk away.
Absolutely. My teachable moment is locate the higher level of yourself. Deal with yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
then get on with the tough conversation.
Yep.
Once you get to that tough conversation, it's smooth sailing from that. You can either, one, graciously walk away, or two, problem solved and fixed. You guys stay together.
Yeah.
But either way, you have to have that conversation.
Right.
There is no road, taken until you get to that tough conversation.
Yeah. Kathy says it goes back to having a plan before leaving. I think that only happens when you allowed yourself to be there, go into your relationship, having your own and having something together. Again, it's the conversation. Here's the thing. In American society, there are actually religious groups that refuse to allow women to work today in 2023. Girls would be taken out of school and married off at 14, 15, 16. So there's a lot more going on. And if you're in an abusive situation,
and a lot of people don't know that's happening in upstate New York, also in Pennsylvania.
Yep, Pennsylvania, Utah,
yeah.
West.
A lot of folks don't realize that that's happening up there. That's still happening today.
Mm-hmm.
That's still happening. Well, these young girls will be getting married off at 14 to these pedophiles. To be honest with you, that's what it is.
Listen, if you're a grown man marrying a 14-year-old, you are a pedophile. I don't care what anybody says.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's why people like R. Kelly. I'm like, R. Kelly wrote about 13-year-olds. Like, come on. These that's maybe that should be our next topic. Grooming young women.
Grooming young women. That might be a good one. We could do that. Definitely do that.
People like to talk about girls are being fast, and I'm like, but they're being told by this 30-year-old that's dating them when they're in grade 10 or 11 how they're mature for their age and all that stuff. So yeah, we need to have that conversation.
Grooming young women. That's a good one. It'd be a very touchy one. That real good one. Oh, yeah. While we're here, I want to say a couple of announcements here tonight. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. It's 3 to the hour, so we'll get to the because you got some announcement and we'll get out of here tonight. Really appreciate it. We've reached a milestone here over at the conversation. Coach Dee and I, we're actually engaging almost 12,000 people a week. Almost 12,000 people a week. Can't thank you guys enough for welcoming me back. I really appreciate it. The love, I feel it. And this different ability. You guys still here. I was kind of reluctant of coming back and doing it, but you guys are showing up and showing out. And it's truly appreciated. We're engaging over almost 12,000 people. Almost 12,000 people. And it's appreciated. The support is appreciated. For all the other shows on demand on our platform, that's b2gunitytv.com. You guys go over there, you can catch Conversation with Trent Friends with Coach D, as well as Your Story with Tammy Gator as well, Tammy Gator Live. Have a good thing going over at the B2G network. Really appreciate it, and we see all the love coming in.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I had to laugh because Slash said, did somebody say Elvis? Oh, let's go. Oh, we will go down that road next time when we have the conversation, sir.
Yeah, that's Slash is crazy. Somebody say Elvis. Yeah, he did. He did that. He did. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely right. Elvis did do that. Yeah. Married that young girl.
Jerry Lee Lewis.
Absolutely.
She was like 12, 13.
Yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
A whole pile of them.
Exactly.
Then you have what is it?
Woody Harrelson. No, not Woody Harrelson. Woody, the director Woody. I know you're talking.
His adopted daughter.
Yeah.
Or not his adopted daughter. His girlfriend's adopted daughter. That's just like.
I think we're gonna have that. Let's have that conversation on Wednesday.
Yeah, that sounds good.
What did you say? Grooming young girls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should have that conversation on Wednesday.
It does. Young boys are involved too because there's that. Remember the teacher with that young man?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I forget. I'll look up their names. I'll have their names for it next week.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a feel-good conversation, man. It was real good.
Yeah. Remember,
so we appreciate you guys.
Listen to hear, people.
Exactly. We appreciate you guys, and as always, if you can't catch us on Wednesday or Sunday, catch us on the B2G Unity Network every day on demand. So B2GUnityTV.com is the spot. on demand. It's 15 hours of videos of Coach Dee and myself, and it's there for you guys absolutely free. So we really appreciate you guys tuning in. Anything else? Any closing remarks?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to next week. But yeah, always seek to understand people. Have the conversations. Once you have the conversation it's done with, then you can have a sigh of relief and move on to other issues.
And with that said, we'll close on those remarks. Right, you guys be epic and have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Conversations with Trent in conjunction with Taylor Kennedy Media and your radio network would like to thank you for calling in and listening to tonight's episode. We hope that tonight's conversation offended you just enough to turn your mirror inward to come back for more. So until next week's conversation, be epic.